Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, welcome. Hang on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do 20 things at once here. Hello. Welcome to the show, and forgive me for that clumsy beginning. Who covers, I have a question, who covers a huge and consequential local news story when that huge and consequential local news story concerns the local daily news paper? Well, generally speaking, not the paper. And so we have exactly that situation going on here in Pittsburgh, has been going on for some time. And I'll tell you who covers it. Ryan Deto of Pittsburgh City Paper, the senior writer. He's been doing a lot of coverage of this huge and consequential story here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, because God knows you will not get the news from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Ryan, hi, welcome.
Hello. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Nice to be back.
It's nice to hear your voice. So I know you have been pretty much 24/7 working, and I thank you for taking some time out to talk to us. But this story, I want to get a little bit to the protests as well, but this story, which comes out of the protests here in Pittsburgh following the murder of George Floyd, what is happening at the Pittsburgh Post Gazette? I'm just going to give you that big softball there. Go for it.
Well, so I guess it all started during this protest coverage that had unfolded across the country and in Pittsburgh. And once Pittsburgh started to get its protests related to the death of George Floyd, one of the Post Gazette staffers, who is responsible for social media and virality and stuff like that, tweeted out just a hilarious tweet about...
You know what, Ryan? I saw it, I think, almost immediately, and I thought it was so brilliant. I retweeted it almost immediately.
I did too.
Yeah.
I feel like I was within the first 100 people to retweet.
Me too.
There are like 50,000 people now.
So explain it. I mean, what was tweeted was scenes from the aftermath of the Kenny Chesney concert here in Pittsburgh.
Which like people, if they're aware, is just, I mean, just a shit show, to be perfectly honest. Like, there's trash everywhere throughout the parking lot surrounding Heinz Field, throughout the North Shore. It's just chaos. It's chaos. It cost the city a ton of money to clean up. Kenny Chesney in a fight with the city over covering the cost for it. The city has sued Kenny Chesney, I think, over multiple years over this. It just becomes this huge event that most city of Pittsburgh residents, I would argue, including myself, hate and don't want to see. And I'm sure there are some city of Pittsburgh residents that attend the show, but it feels like there's a lot that maybe come from all over the region to attend this massive show. And
well, let's make clear, Ryan. Kenny Chesney's audience, when he has these concerts, is 99.9, if not 100%, white.
Right, totally white. Very, very, very ex-urban or rural or suburban even. Like I said, probably some city residents, but I would say that's a small minority. But anyway, it just becomes this huge trash event basically. Yeah. And some people people in the city are mad, but it does not get this huge, massive coverage that it's trash again, and people are get this guy out of our city. But what happened on May 30th is that after the main protest and some protest marchers had continued back downtown, some people, unclear if they're related to the protesters or not, started to loot and do some property damage to some storefronts downtown, including like CVS and some other stuff. I think it was like maybe 5 stores or something like that. It wasn't like this huge thing, but it was like significant. Mm-hmm. And so Alexis Johnson, the staffer at the PG, had kind of tweeted out like, "Oh my gosh, look at this damage from these looters that is happening." And then she's like, "Oh wait, no, this is just the Kenny Chesney concert." And it was like the perfect tweet because there were so many people out there that were like, "Oh no, the looting," and the mayor and the and the chief of police were all talking about how terrible this looting was. And it's like, we allow this kind of property damage and this kind of trash to happen every year. Yeah. And so that's why it was such a great tweet. But what happened is that tweet, since it went viral, since it has 50,000 retweets,
which meant, I mean, it was not just, even though we thought it was an inside Pittsburgh joke,
right?
50,000 people retweeting it means it went way beyond Pittsburgh.
Right. Well, and Alexis was smart. She didn't put Pittsburgh anywhere in the tweet or anything like that.
No,
so
she did not.
It really resonated with many cities and many regions across the nation, that like this is like a thing that happened. And so it went viral. And then there was news that that staffer, Alexis Johnson, was pulled off of any kind of protest coverage for the PG, her editors claiming that she was biased because of this hilarious tweet. And from there, we were fortunate enough, City Paper, myself, were fortunate enough to break that first story, and it started to get traction. The union members that represented, the PG stood behind Alexis and did a viral social media protest campaign where they did the hashtag #IStandWithAlexis and basically retweeted the same tweet.
Yeah, so you had all these other reporters now at the paper retweeting the tweet that got her pulled off protest coverage. Right. Now, were all those reporters who retweeted it then suspended from protest coverage?
So that's what we reported initially. There was one reporter who tweeted that out initially, saying 110 staffers. That number had been confirmed down by the Post Gazette staff to 82 staffers, and it wasn't confirmed by management. But until Keith Burris's editorial he just ran yesterday kind of confirms that those people who did tweet in protest are also quote unquote biased and have been pulled off of any protest coverage. So it does appear that those 82 staffers that tweeted in solidarity with Alexis Johnson have been pulled off. There's also, in all this chaos, there was also a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, Michael Santiago, who is also black like Alexis Johnson, that was pulled off of protest coverage as well for allegedly for speaking out against these actions. And all of this has just snowballed. It's insane. We covered the first story and we're like, wow, this is a big story. This is going to be a statewide story probably, going out. And it just got more and more support as it went along. And it's become a massive national story to this point where PBS NewsHour picked up on it, Washington Post, New York Times, almost everybody have picked up on this. And
the general tone of the coverage is, do you believe this? This woman, yes, this newspaper, Pittsburgh's daily newspaper, pulled black reporters from covering the protest, and I understand even changed some other reporters' reporting.
I forgot about that.
Well, there's a lot happening. Yeah,
I was the first to report on that too. That yes, they had changed. They had removed stories basically. Like if you went to the original URL of stories written by Ashley Murray, who is a PG reporter and a former CP reporter, actually, and Lauren Lee, who is a relatively new Post Gazette reporter, they had removed stories. One was about a protest march. The other was about city council considering police reform, legislation.
Both protest-related stories.
Right. Both police brutality-related stories, and those were removed. So if you go to the URL, it's page not found, basically. Eventually, a few hours later, they were replaced with new headlines, new photo heads, and the reporters.
No bylines.
Right, no bylines in the reporters that.
Now, why would why would they do that? Why would Burris and Burris being the editor? Why would they? What were they doing with that?
It appears that this is what they do. I mean, this is an extreme example of totally changing a story after it's already written, which I think a lot of people have said rightly is censorship. At least, maybe not government sanctioned censorship, but by the editors. I guess because they just want to shape the thing. Maybe it seems like it's almost a pissing match a little bit. Like, oh, let's exert our power as editors. We can do this kind of situation. But also the PG. A lot of more details have come out from former staffers that are saying that Burris and company are guiding editorial coverage in a way away from how the reporters wanted to originally cover stories and make it more favorable to conservative arguments, in my opinion.
So I noted that I think it was the Allegheny Conference.
Yes.
Which is hardly a lefty or even liberal organization. It's
a pro-business organization.
It's akin to the Chamber of Commerce, right? The Allegheny Conference announced it was pulling a full-page ad, which in these times is a nice hunk of change for struggling newspapers. They were pulling it from the Post Gazette. And why did the Allegheny Conference say it was pulling it?
It was the same. It was kind of the same reason. It was a response to the fact that they thought that what happened to Alexis Johnson and Michael Santiago was wrong, and they are asking the Post Gazette to
reinstate them.
Yeah, reinstate them,
right. So other
racism, basically.
Okay, my understanding is that the Allegheny Conference is not alone. That there are others.
Pittsburgh Station said that it would be pulling ads, or it would be stopping any ads that it usually has with the Post Gazette. And I think that includes some other area foundations. I think Pittsburgh Foundation maybe just led that.
But in general, Pittsburgh foundations are now pulling any ads they had.
And then last night it was announced late that Giant Eagle is no longer going to carry Post Gazette papers in their stores.
Wow.
And basically saying the same thing, that we condone racism and we need you to, we need the Post Gazette to join that.
You mean we condemn? You said condone. We condemn racism. That's a slight difference.
But sorry, condemn racism and.
Well, that's amazing. So all this is really hitting Mr. Block, the owner.
Right on the block.
Yeah. They're losing money with their anti-journalistic, journalism.
Right. And, and they've been claiming the paper for years has already been losing money. So now they're making the situation actively worse.
Could this take? I mean, I know the morale there among its staff has been, as low as morale can be. This is a hostile working environment for the reporters there. Yeah. I cannot imagine what it is like to go to work there.
No, and I've spoken with some reporters there, just on background, because they're really upset and anything to come out quite yet, but they're really they're extremely upset. I don't know how else to put it. Like, this is something that I couldn't imagine working in an environment like this where you might think that your stories might get pulled after you file them. I mean, that's insane. Like, and but it's also a hard working environment for journalists. It's not like you can quit and easily find another job right now, you know?
Well, you know what happens in cases like this, whether even the reporter knows it or not, the danger is with this kind of intimidation from management that you start to self-censor.
Right? Yeah, because you might just not even have to deal with the situation.
Right.
You might just story that's softer so that you know it's going to get through this like gauntlet that is PG management, you know, editorship. And that is terrible. And you know, to all the audience out there, I just want to remind that, like, the staff at the PG is top-notch. They win Pulitzer Prizes. So I know people don't want to read them anymore, and I totally understand why, but we got to figure out, and I mean as Pittsburgh as a whole, we have to figure out a situation in which that staff is preserved and arguably the paper is preserved somehow, but it's just a really tough situation, you know, because we can't not have a large daily like the Post Gazette, and the Trib is not going to grow. They've recently been, you know, the Trib has also been shrinking during this time because of COVID and because of everything. Their page views are up, but their staff isn't growing. Our staff isn't growing anytime soon here. We're also
no, of course not. You know, listen, I asked at the beginning, who covers? How do Pittsburghers know about this story? Has television news, as far as you know, local TV news?
Yeah, I believe
KPA
eventually picked up on it. Not like initially. I think it was after maybe the city paper's second or third story before they picked up on it.
KDKA, but they have a relationship with the Post Gazette.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, KDKA uses it. There's a relationship of a business relationship.
They have a partnership, right.
And so it's how... Yeah, I got to tell you, this is, it's something. I don't know. And I see these tweets from people who say, I don't want to give any money to Block and Burris, but I don't want to I don't want to hurt the reporters. What can I do?
Here's the thing about it right now is that let's just take the Block claims at face value and say that the paper is losing money, which other people are saying too. So you're technically not giving the Block money because he's losing money in this, you know, ownership of PG. That money is arguably directly going to the reporters that work there. So I would say keep your subscription because your money isn't going into the profits of Block Communications. They get all their profits allegedly from their TV stations and their radio stations that they own across the country, right? But they apparently don't make any money on the Post Gazette. So there has to be a better way to protest, I think, than like canceling and not reading.
Is there anywhere where a community has purchased a paper? In other words, could the city, we the people purchase this newspaper?
I obviously I can't say for certain. I'm sure that there are some places that are a community newspaper. I would say that they're extremely small towns. You know, I doubt. I don't.
Well, maybe with some foundation help. I mean, it's thinking outside the box, but maybe that's a possibility.
Foundations already. Yes, I totally agree that foundations should do it, but the foundations already give to a lot of media, like public sources, basically run technically on foundation money. Yeah. And, foundations give to WESA, which is a nonprofit government, affiliated, media company. So, that would be that. Maybe that is a solution.
You would think Block might want to get rid of this headache. I don't know, especially if it's not making him any money.
The thing about Block is that he can get rid of the headache by firing Burris and demoting Karen Kane. Like, You know, like
yeah, but they're doing his bidding. Why would he do that?
Because
I mean,
it's bad PR at this point that it's going to lose even more money. He has to make a business, right?
Well, I don't think what you're. We have a caller. We should let the caller in. But caller, are you there?
Hey guys, it's Kristen from Beaver Falls.
Hello, Kristen.
Not really, just kidding.
Okay.
I was wondering if you two could help me out with something here, because I understand journalism, but I'm failing to see where Burris has a point with what he did, because if you look at Twitter is not a journalistic piece. It is not anything that is to be taken as such. And someone who would write an opinion on Twitter, how does that equal to bias in reporting that hadn't even been done at that point?
Right.
It wasn't a published, she wasn't opining in a published piece or showing bias in a published piece, so I fail to see where he was going with this.
Right.
I totally agree with you. I don't think there's any bias shown by Johnson in her tweet. I think that's a bullshit claim, Lynn.
Absolutely.
Well, and in fact, I want to say, I mean, you could say there was nobody better suited to cover, to bring life experience to coverage of what is happening now than Alexis Johnson. She comes from a family. She's black. She comes from a family that is filled with law enforcement people. Her father is a state trooper, or was a state trooper. I mean, you can't. That is somebody who clearly then would have some sense of both sides. What she tweeted was clearly a joke, a very funny observation.
So funny.
And I have to tell you, newspapers and TV stations have pushed their reporters to have presences on social media.
That's what gets me the most.
Job. That's literally her job, is to have a good social media presence. That is her actual job at the PG. So for
social media,
her viral tweet is insane. They should have given her a bonus.
Yes.
Get that viral of a tweet. It's just that's her job.
And I'm sorry, but Burris's letter yesterday was just nothing but smoke and mirrors and gaslighting, and it just made me so angry to even read it.
Yeah, it was incoherent, I thought, but...
I'll tell you what, my 18-year-old can write something more thoughtful and, it blows my mind, but... Yeah. Thank you guys much for the clarity there. I'm thinking maybe I had something wrong in my train of thought, so I thought I'd ask two journalists.
Well, no, we're absolutely in agreement with you. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks. Have a good one, guys.
You too. I don't know. What's your sense of the mental health? I'm not kidding you, of Mr. Block.
I mean, I can't speak to his mental health, but I can say that I've talked to a lot of people about it. I've done a ton of reporting on the Post Gazette. I've talked to a lot of people who've worked personally with Block, either on or off record. And, he just doesn't seem to really grasp or understand how newspapers work. He doesn't, that's pretty much shown by some of his editorial. He doesn't make many editorial choices, but when he does, it's always like, wrong. Hey, can you cover the, Kentucky Derby party or something? He just doesn't seem to really understand how media works. And he has no confidence from any people that have worked closely with him. I'll say that. A lot of people have no confidence in his ability to guide and run a successful newspaper or successful media company. So, he just doesn't seem to understand or grasp it. I've heard Alan Block, his brother, has a little bit more savvy in those departments, but he doesn't have a lot of confidence either. So that's kind of what has happened with Block, I think.
Well, the impact on the city of Pittsburgh, on the ability of its paper have been, stepping up as much as you can. But as you put it, we are such a small little staff compared to,
We're not even 1/10. We're
of
not
what?
even 1/10 size of what the editorial department at the PG is.
And that's a decimated editorial department. I mean, that's
we are so small. Last week, I don't even know how many hours I worked. I worked so much because I had 2 large stories. I had the protest coverage before all the PG stuff happened, and then I was covering and assigning out stories about the PG, and it's just. It's impossible. It is impossible for an alt-weekly. I appreciate all the praise. It is amazing how much praise that the CP has gotten over this last week, and I love it personally.
Well, there's a great deal of gratitude, for the job you're doing.
And it feels really great, but I'm also a realist, and there's no way that the CP can take over anything that the Post Gazette does, even if we were to grow, which we can't do right now because there's no ad revenue. To do so, even if we could, we would have to grow tenfold. We'd be a totally different paper. We are an alternative. We are an alternative weekly. That means we would cover the alternative news that doesn't get as much coverage. That's why we provided a different narrative about the protest that happened on Monday. That's why we cover other media, because other media is usually not as willing to cover other media companies. That's what our role in Pittsburgh is, and I love that we do that. But without the Post Gazette, and especially with a shrinking Trib, it's not feasible. We need those daily papers. We absolutely need them. I wish they were bigger than they already are. There's already a ton of stories that have gone missing.
I can't imagine what we're missing. I can't imagine, and it frightens me. So I just want to move on a little bit to we have another call. Let's let the caller in before I somewhat pivot here. Caller, go ahead.
Good morning, Lynn and Ryan. This is Ella from Penn Hills. I want to thank you for your article on KDKA. The one thing I want to say I didn't get to read this last article, but on the original Post Office, the Post Gazette, it says, "Show people the light and they will find a way." And I think that's exactly what Alexis and Santiago did. They showed a light on something and let the people decide what it was.
Right.
Now, my comments on the KDKA. At one time, KDK was a wholesome radio station.
Yes.
For example, Bob Logue would always end his program with, "God loves you and so do I." Chris Moore always wants to have a conversation with his listeners.
Right.
Also, along with Lynn Hayes Freeland, they want to engage in conversation. And people build I learned this back in the 80s. People build your consciousness. And what's happening, everything that they're talking about is going to your mind when it should be going to your heart first, and then you decide, you start creating ideas. But that's not the way KDK, it's falling down. They're pushing their agenda on the listeners.
Well, stop and think of what you're saying, Ella, because I absolutely agree with you. Two of the steadfast institutions, media institutions in this city, KDKA Radio, that 50,000-watt blowhard, and the Post Gazette, are both now in the clutches of Trump-loving right-wing ownership.
Right. And
in the article, in the article, Lynn, you mentioned that's what the listeners want to listen to. It goes right to their mind because that's all there.
I don't. They're losing listeners left, right, and center. Ryan, didn't you do a piece saying that?
Right.
I was stunned by this because when I was on radio, I mean, KDK was always number one in the ratings. You couldn't beat them because they have a bigger reach, a bigger signal. They were just bigger. And in the ratings now, that once mighty KDK is what, Brian, did you say coming in like number 10?
Yeah, up until very recently, they appear to get what I would call coronavirus bump that happened in April, where they moved back up to number 2. But before that, months and months before that, they were consistently more at 9 and 10. And so I think there is a coronavirus news bump for radio stations. Why would people listen to sports radio right now? There's literally nothing going on,
Yeah, true.
Which is normally sports radio is much higher in Pittsburgh. It's usually in the top 5 consistently. So there appears to be that sports radio is dropping and KDK is going up. But yes, consistently for a while, KDK radio was flailing, and they've seemingly taken on a strategy to encourage right-wing commentary devoid of community news that is also kind of leaving a huge void. So, yeah, I think, Lynn, you bring up a really good point that you have these 2 massive institutions, the Post Gazette and KDK Radio, that were known for doing just outstanding community-based news reporting.
Right.
And KDK Radio is now going the Fox News,
that format, that template. And the Post Gazette is following suit. I mean, with its ownership and its opinion content.
And just to say that, like, CP, for all the good work that we're doing, and I'm so proud of our staff, we cannot pick up the slack. It's impossible.
No,
it is impossible for us to do so.
Right. Ella, thank you so much. It was a great call.
Well, finally, I just want to make 2 quotes. Diana Ross saying, "Reach out and touch someone, make this world a better place." And Shania Twain, "Find yourself esteem and forever you will dream."
All right, Ella.
That's all.
Thank you. Those quoting great philosophers there. But you can't reach out and touch somebody now.
Right.
There's a coronavirus.
We got to get that vaccine.
Ryan, I know you got a lot of work to do. Let me just pick your brain real fast about the protest movement here. It has been incredibly impressive. I joined one march that was in my neighborhood, and I was blown away by the seriousness of the marchers, the attentiveness to the speakers, the care that they took not to litter.
Yes.
And the organization of it. I was really, I've been on a number of protests in my 70-plus years, and that was impressive. And I'm wondering, will this continue? How can they sustain this kind of a presence?
Right. It feels like this time it really is different, and they are sustaining it. I mean, it's incredible. Like, we had to talk editorially yesterday about, like, wow, like, there's another protest. It's like, well, we only have a small staff. We have a ton of other stories to do. Like, do we go out and cover every single one? We finally decided, we're like, well, we can't cover every single one. There's so many of them. There's too many of them.
Was there one yesterday? It was the one day I didn't hear helicopters over my neighborhood, but
I believe there was one in Monroeville. I don't know if it was.
Oh, yes, there was. Yes.
Maybe that was Tuesday and not yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yesterday seemed like a quiet day. I'm not sure.
It might have been a quiet day. There's more, but there's more actions today. I believe we're covering one at Alderdice that some students had organized. I believe there's a bike ride that some cyclists are doing in support. So it's incredible. The numbers are incredible. The sustaining nature of them is incredible. We covered the protest after the Antoine Rose shooting.
Yes.
And also after the verdict, the acquittal of Michael Rosted, his shooter. And believe after his shooting, we had 4 days of pretty intense protesting, but we've had something like 12 days or something like that for this, and this event didn't happen in Pittsburgh. So this is where I think the protesters are. There's definitely more of them. It's not just one or two organizations that are bringing everybody together. It is a ton of organizations that are doing it. The protesters are overwhelmingly young. These are
amazing.
These are young people. They are finally finding their voice. Some of these same people were at the Antoine Rose protest, but there are way more now. And there seems to be a huge shift in, public perception about this stuff too.
Exactly.
This really, if this continues to sustain, and we've already seen huge results. There's already been huge results with
incredible results every day. Something else happens when NASCAR.
Yes, I mean this huge NASCAR said no more Confederate flags, which is like, okay, why were they even having them in the beginning? But still, that's still a huge result, right? And,
well, because NASCAR came out of the South. That's where it came out of, Talladega and all that. That's their big track.
Southern sport, for sure. It's a Southern
Yes,
sport,
and for NASCAR to realize, okay, this is a moment where, I mean, we finally may be about to win the Civil War.
This is incredible. The things that are happening, the taking down of Confederate statues, the places banning Confederate flags, we're like this. Also, there's another thing. Like Cops, the TV show got canceled.
Yeah, I know.
I just have to say that Cops, the TV show, was one of the most destructive TV shows ever to be put on television. It
glorified police brutality.
Right, and it glorified police brutality. It did the opposite to people who were alleged criminals. These people are alleged criminals on that show. They might not even be charged. It's just like there were 43 people that were arrested, or 44 people that were arrested downtown during the first protest / looting, whatever you want to call it. 39 of those charges were dropped by the Apollo. Let's talk about this. Like these are huge things, and so there is huge movement. You have a lot of municipalities that are thinking seriously about doing police reform, including Pittsburgh, and so.
Okay, I want to ask you a question there, and I'm going to let you go. Our police chief here seems to have generally handled this, in a public relations way rather well. The mayor had the misstep of trusting what he was told by the police about what happened at another demonstration in East Liberty, and has taken some heat. But overall, what's your sense of where the city leadership and the police leadership here are, and is it conceivable there could be true change?
I think right now it is conceivable, but they're going to have to keep it up. I mean, protesters are going to have to keep it up. They're going to have to keep putting pressure, because you have some counselors who are introducing legislation, but we don't know how the mayor feels about it. The mayor has kind of signaled that he did screw up, but he's definitely not signaling I'm ready to totally change everything, which is it's honestly a little confusing, I think, to some really inside observers, because the FOP hates Peduto. They hate his guts, and so it's so weird to worry about how they think about him, and
the FOP is the biggest problem, obviously.
Oh, of course. Have you seen the videos of the NYPD police union?
Yes.
Doing this victim blaming bullshit.
Right.
Personally, my opinion is that there is a cultural issue around police forces in America, that this is why it's so hard to get them to do any kind of serious reform, because of shows like Cops, honestly, because of shows and also because of the power police unions have. And but it's incredible that this is a time when it's actually happening. It didn't happen after Antoine wrote.
No.
There was.
It didn't never happen. It's happening now, and this is a most extraordinary time. And I, who am an inveterate pessimist, have found myself feeling some hope as I look at this young leadership coming up, and their passion, and essentially the torch being passed to a younger generation that maybe.
Since they're showing up in force right now, some leadership realize that if we scorn these people, they're done. They will never support us, right? And that means total change. We might be on the precipice. And as a millennial, I can just say, please, God, let this happen.
Like, I know.
I'm on the precipice of some huge change.
We might be.
Change.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but I hear your prayer, and may it go from your lips to God's ears, and I too totally agree. Listen, I'll let you go. I have a few other things I got to do, and there's no reason to hold you up because you got to go find your bike.
I might have a friend who might be lending me giving me one of his backup bikes. So I think I might be in the clear, but I think the bike is gone. But that's okay. It happens.
You know that one of our listeners wanted to help buy you one.
I know. I don't think I responded to you yet. I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart, but I can afford a new bike. I'm a good spendthrift guy. I can get a new bike. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Tell them to give to these movements. Tell them to give to some of these things in my honor. I would appreciate that.
Oh, wow.
For sure. That would make me a lot more happier than I can always get a new bike. I can
Okay. Yeah. You're the best, Ryan, and I'm proud of you and the work that you and everyone else on the staff is doing. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for having me on, and keep it up.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye. Guys, I wanted to tell you, inform you about something, and we have this posted on our Facebook page because it's too much information for me to give to you, but it's an opportunity for young people, and I'm not kidding myself that there's a bunch of young people listening right now, but I do know that a lot of you have young people in your lives, so let them know that the August Wilson Cultural Center is doing its third annual Summer Youth Writers Camp. And it is all online this year. But this is an incredible opportunity for kids who want to write, want to know more about how you get your voice on paper. And the gentleman who teaches this is a poet and teacher here in Pittsburgh. His poetry has been honored for its excellence. His name is Cameron Barnett, and he'll be doing the teaching, and he'll be using August Wilson, obviously, as a gateway into how one writes. So everything this year is abbreviated and online. The registration is free, and it's open to students ages 11 to 15. That's a little bit of a window, 11 to 15. And it sounds like an extraordinary. I wish I were 11 to 15. Check it out on our website, or check it out at the August Wilson Center's website, because you have to register online and give them contact information so they can get in touch with you, okay? So ACC, August Wilson African American Center Cultural Center. Geez, never mind. You'll find it. You'll find it. I just had to get that out to you. It was important. And a few other things. Okay. Oh, here's something that's good for a chuckle in these times. In case you missed it, the White House yesterday actually sued or sent a cease and desist letter, I don't know if that's the same thing, to CNN. And the cease and desist letter was about the fact that CNN had had on its news spoken of a poll that showed Joe Biden ahead of Donald Trump by 14 percentage points. The White House reaction to that was to send a cease and desist letter to CNN calling the poll phony and a stunt, and saying it tries to stifle the momentum and enthusiasm for the president and present a false view of the actual support across America for this president. Trump, they're demanding a retraction of the poll whose numbers they don't like. Now, in the cartoon world that we are inhabiting here, I guess that doesn't get a lot of attention, but just so as you know. And as an addendum, we were speaking yesterday about Trump's new favorite network, which would be One America News Network, which is also Vladimir Putin's favorite network in the United States, and which actually employs some of Putin's disinformation fellows as television reporters. And on Wednesday, that'd be yesterday, the chief executive of One America, Robert Herring, let the White House know, and I'll quote it, One America will be releasing a poll concerning the 2020 presidential race. It looks as though it will be in favor of Donald Trump. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a fascist state looks like, okay? These intimidation tactics from on high to legitimate news operations, the growth of illegitimate propagandist organizations who will give Der Fuhrer what he wants. And I just want it made clear that that is what's happening here. I know that's like a word you're not supposed to use, but Robert Reich, the former labor secretary, said this, I believe yesterday, too. I have held off using the F word for 3.5 years, but there's no longer any honest alternative. Trump is a fascist, and he is promoting fascism in America. Others aren't so sure he's a fascist. Someone else who's written books on fascism said this, whether or not he is capable of actually grasping the concept, Trump is performing fascism. One other thing that I wanted to let you know, historically fascist movements harden into fascist regimes when given the opportunity, and here's where the opportunity comes in. Here's where it came in Germany, and here's where it's trying to come into the United States. It can get a foothold and actually take over a government when the enfeebled conservative elites, this is read Republican Party, when the Republican Party trying to cling to power resorts to bringing in an outsider who can rile up their base. Now, that's a history book about how Hitler rose to power. And it is, you see, and you wonder why. What has happened to the Republican? What the hell? They know, as they look at the young people in the streets and the young leadership, that their days are close to finished. And you can't believe they're not like moving in a direction where they might be able to retain power. They don't see a way to do that. So they've thrown in their lot with this outsider who has now taken over their party. And whether he knows it or not, because he's just a natural fascist. His personality is a fascistic personality. George Orwell, who is the go-to guy on how language is used and what words mean and how they resonate. George Orwell, once looking for a synonym for fascist, said the closest he could come to is bully. The use of the National Guard and the military. By the way, I don't know if you've seen that, speaking of the use of the military, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, who was seen in his fatigues marching behind the president after Lafayette Park had been violently cleared of peaceful protesters, so that the president could walk over and hold a Bible up in front of a church. General Milley, it has been said by those close to him, has been in agony. That was a quote. Ever since, and somehow his agony has only now come out in a public fashion, and he has said he was wrong. He apologizes for taking part in that stunt. He maintains, and I suspect it's true, that he didn't know where they were going. He was led to believe, and here's what happens all the time, that people around him who are being used for props are not really told. He thought he was being asked to go out and review the Guard troops. Well, that's what he says. I'm willing to actually cut him a break and believe that. Speaking of those National Guard troops, that was the D.C. National Guard. And reporting today in the, I believe it was in the New York Times, say that, speaking of agonizing, members of that National Guard that were used to help clear Lafayette Park are just beside themselves. They are ashamed. They are so embarrassed. One soldier said that he and other troops were so ashamed that they took part in that action that they have not told any family members or any friends. One said it's a very tough conversation to have when a soldier turns to me and they're saying, "Sir, you know, my cousin was up there. He was just yelling at me. That was my neighbor you wanted me to push. That was my best friend from high school." That is a quote from Lieutenant Jenkins Bay, who is African American, as many of those National Guard troops were. And I don't know that they will so readily follow orders again. And did you see that Joe Biden, when asked, does he worry about the election being stolen, he said it's his greatest worry. He was asked, does he worry about, if he wins, Trump refusing to leave the White House? He says, yes, I've considered that. And then Biden said something to the effect of, I'm sure that the military will escort him out. And this, I have to read it to you. This is from, who is it? It's Dana Milbank. And I'm sure you, as anybody, when you heard that Trump was, first of all, even considering giving a national address on racism in America, and then on top of it, it was being written by, his Herman Hess, Stephen Miller. You can't believe it. So anyway, Dana Milbank said, one of the funniest lines is he said, having this white nationalist, Miller, write this speech, he says, this is bound, says Milbank, to raise a furor. And he doesn't spell it F-U-R-O-R. He spells it F-U-H-R-E-R. This is bound to raise a furor. Then he says, but Miller doesn't need to write a thing. Trump has already given his remarks on race many, many times. And here they are. And all of what I'm about to read are Trump's own words on race. Ready? This is our president on the current state of race in America. I have a great relationship with the blacks. I've always had a great relationship with the blacks. Oh, look at my African American over there. Look at him. Nobody has ever done for the black community what President Trump has done. My administration has done more for the black community than any president since Abraham Lincoln. George Floyd is looking down right now and saying, this is a great thing that's happening for our country. It's a great day for him. Diamond and Silk, you're so great. Thank you, Kanye. Thank you. Frederick Douglass is an example of somebody who's done an amazing job and is getting recognized more and more, I notice. Think of this. Blacks for Trump. Black voices for Trump. African Americans for Trump. Call it whatever the hell you want. I have a group of African American guys and gals, by the way, who follow me around, and they think I pay them, and I don't. You know, a well-educated black has a tremendous advantage over a well-educated white in terms of the job market. If I were starting off today, I would love to be a well-educated black because I believe they do have an actual advantage. Sadly, because President Obama has done such a poor job as president, you won't see another black president for generations. To the African American community, I say, what the hell do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth unemployed, last in crime, last in this, last in home ownership, last in the economy, lowest wages. Our inner cities are a disaster. You get shot walking to the store. They have no education. They got no jobs. Wouldn't you love to see some of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field now? And why is so much money sent to the Elijah Cummings district when it's considered the worst run and most dangerous anywhere in the United States? No human being would want to live there. A disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess. And Congressman John Lewis should spend more time on fixing and helping his district, which is in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime-infested. Why do we need more Haitians? Why are we having people from all these shithole countries come here? We should have more people from places like Norway. Can you handle any more? Because it goes on and on and on and on and on. something here that I did want to retweet. As I say that, what President Trump has said on race in America, that was a little teeny bit. If you want more, check Washington Post Dana Milbank. As I speak, the President of the United States, understandably, is holding a meeting at the White House with black leaders. Well, it's about time. Let me read the names of some of the black leaders who he's invited, okay? Wayne Dupree, host of the Wayne Dupree Show. Raynard Jackson, Sonny Johnson, host of Sonny's Corner. Lawrence Jones, host and contributor Fox News. Pastor Daryl Scott and Kareem Lanier. Who the hell do you recognize any of those names? And then it turns out, one of them, the Wayne Dupree, he's a right-wing Sandy Hook and Parkland conspiracy theorist. Sonny Johnson, he homophobic pizza shop that wouldn't serve gays. So, I mean, it is a real who's who of black leadership. God almighty, you cannot make it up. Incredible. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Little Tony says, it was nice to hear Ryan on the show. I missed his weekly visits with you. Hope he'll be a regular again. Well, I think what we decided, Lisa Cunningham, the editor of, executive editor of City Paper, first of all, as Ryan was saying, they are so overwhelmed right now that, and Ryan is the chief writer, that he can't. I mean, there are times when he can take some time, and when we can, focus on a specific topic, then he'll be on. In as much as another reporter might be able to, then they'll be on. But we just can't. I mean, it ain't going to happen now. These are changed times. Oh, this is interesting. A friend has sent me an email that she wrote to the Heinz Endowments on Saturday and their response. And apparently this addresses the suggestion I made about the foundations maybe getting the newspaper. So here's what my friend wrote. Well, okay. She wrote, I woke up this morning to learn that the PG has continued its path of censoring voices when they conflict with the aims of its ultra-conservative ownership. Censorship is always, and she posts something from the union president there, the guild's president, Michael Fuoco. And then she said, where he's talking about the censorship of their reports. My friend Mary goes on to say, censorship is always a threat to democracy, but especially now in these dangerous, turbulent times, censorship is particularly threatening to those most vulnerable among us. The Heinz Endowments has a stellar history of stepping up to rescue our city's floundering industries, pumping money, ideas, and new life into business sectors that would otherwise perish. Is there any industry more vulnerable and more important to equity and social justice than a free press? Isn't the news industry ripe in this city for some help? May I suggest that the Heinz Endowments work with other Pittsburgh foundations to grow and support a free press in Pittsburgh. We are blessed with amazing, talented journalists who continue to persevere under the increasingly difficult and oppressive work environment at the Post Gazette. We are also blessed with passionate, invigorated young people in our community who would jump at the chance to work under the tutelage of such experienced journalists. Social justice is utterly dependent on the amplification of the voices and stories of the disenfranchised, the neglected, the oppressed, and the vulnerable. We need a daily newspaper unencumbered by political motivation that seeks to snuff out those voices and stories. Please consider using the enormous benevolent power of the Heinz endowments to address these vital issues. That's a wonderful letter, MB. Thank you. The answer is very short, but it is from a Carmen Anderson at the Heinz Endowment. Good morning, and thank you. Our organization has been following this issue. I will share your timely question with colleagues. You raise an important issue for consideration. Way to go! See? Some of the rest of you could jump on board and give my friend MB some cover there, a little more. Yeah. The Heinz Endowment, Pittsburgh Foundation, all these people need to hear from us that, yeah, they've stepped in a lot of situations. In fact, they stepped in and saved the August Wilson Center, and all the wonderful programming that comes out of there. Well, I think the arguments made by Mary Beth, are, wow, strong. And you could follow up and do the same. I'll just stay here and bloviate. Let's see, the 173 cases. Okay, today's COVID report shows an increase of 21 cases since yesterday. And an increase of 1 additional death. And just in that line, I want to share some information with you. As you know, we've got increasing cases in many states. We in the Northeast took it on the chin in the initial stages of this pandemic, but now Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, South Carolina, all those states are seeing jumps of more than 40% in the last week. We've reached another milestone nationally. 2 million Americans are now infected and have been infected. And to get from 1 million Americans infected to 2 million Americans infected took just 44 days. The outbreak has killed more than 112,600 Americans. And as I said, cases rising now in 21 states, many of them states that hadn't been quick to in any way close down and were incredibly quick to open up. And I just want to say that, again, people thinking that because we're in a green phase means that you can go back to your life. Don't kid yourself, and continue to be very vigilant and very careful, or we'll see Somebody saying, "Oh, well, this is like this what's happening now is like the second wave." No, it's not the second wave. We are still very much in the first wave. We're probably now in the third inning. And so people who are just deciding, "Oh, well, I guess that's that. We did that. Good." Don't kid yourself. Oh my God. Barbara just sent me a piece from the Atlantic. Jeez. Walmart. Is this the Atlantic? No, it's not the Atlantic. It's Ezra Klein. On Vox. Okay. And the headline is, "America is changing and so is the media." And again, he's suggesting something's happening here, to quote an old song from another turbulent time. Something's happening here. But I just happened to quickly look at the first two paragraphs. Wow. And his piece, I guess, is about how the media is changing. Let me just read the first little bit to you that I happened to see. In January 1939, The Atlantic published an article titled, "I Married a Jew." In it, the author set out, quote, "to tell the world how it really is between a Jew and a Christian, since the world is evidently so intensely interested." She then confesses that her husband, though lovely in many respects, quote, "still has the Jewish hypersensitivity toward all criticism of his race." She says that she frequently tries, quote, "to see things." She admits that she frequently tries, quote, "to see things from the Nazis' point of view and to find excuses for the things they do, only to be met by the hurt confusion of my husband." She goes on to argue that Jews, quote, "must make some practical and rational efforts to adapt their ways more graciously to the Gentile pattern, since they prefer to live in Gentile lands," end quote. She confesses that, quote, "our hottest argument concerns the question whether there exists such a thing as a Jewish problem," end quote. And that's the Atlantic. 1939. And Ezra Klein says the obvious corollary is that no reputable news outlet, least of all the Atlantic, would publish any such piece today. An editor would read the words, "It is only when Ben is surrounded by his family that he lapses into Jewish ways, and then, no doubt, because of his early Jewish training." In 1939, the ideas in "I Married a Jew" were in the sphere of legitimate controversy that a legitimate journal would print. In 2020, they're firmly in the sphere of deviance. And those boundaries are changing again now. The difference is that the change and the conversation behind it is playing out in public. So when you see the roiling stories around media right now around the New York Times, printing outright fascist opinion piece from Senator Cotton. And then holy hell breaks loose from the public, from their own staff. They pull the thing, apologize for it. The opinion editor resigns, steps down, gets thrown out. The media right now, we spent the whole first part of this hour talking about Pittsburgh and its media. The fact is that, media would prefer to change whatever in private, of course, but it's now changing before our eyes. So keep an eye on all of that. It's hugely, hugely important. And Barbara, thank you for sending me that. One more thing and I'll let you go. Of course, you could have let me go long ago. I don't know. Elizabeth Warren, who sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee, has placed an amendment to the annual defense bill. That's where, the military gets all his money. And she put an amendment in the bill to rename all our military bases that are named for Confederate generals. And she says it's long past due to end this tribute to white supremacy. That'll set up, of course, an interesting thing, the fact that this is the Senate, which the Republicans, the neo-fascist party, control, means I don't think her amendment is going to prevail. But maybe Romney, maybe Murkowski. I don't know about the committee itself. I don't know if either of them are on it. You don't know. Pay attention. Stuff is happening every other minute, which is why it's hard that I won't talk to you again until next Monday, because God knows, I say that every Thursday, God knows what'll happen between now and then. You stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't know we're in a green zone, okay? And it's still out there. Thanks. Be safe.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.